What's going on, y'all? It's your boy, Pentley Holmes, that singer-songwriter in pursuit of a wild dream, and I'm back with another episode. Y quiero decirte gracias por acompañarme en mi segundo episodio de mi camino en aprendiendo español. Thank you for joining me in my second episode of my journey of learning Spanish. We're about to get back into this episode in just a minute, but you know I gotta roll that credit. All right, welcome back, y'all. I think in the first part I ended at my obsession with the language, my why. And again, thank you for joining me. This lesson, this story about me learning Spanish is not my journey learning Spanish. It's not just about learning Spanish. It's my journey of learning everything. Again, I learned how to learn things. I've learned how to do many things. I got a van build episode series. I learned how to flip houses and renovate houses from learning how to build a van. I learned how to play guitar. I learned how to book myself on a national tour across the country. Many, many things. I've learned how to cook. I've learned how to just do a lot of things, and I've learned how to learn things. So my journey in Spanish, hopefully this series teaches you how to learn things, difficult things. There's this saying, how would you how would you how would you carve through a mountain if you only had a spoon? It's something like that. You can Google it. And the answer is, it's like a trick question, but the answer is one scoop at a time. And it's like, that's any gigantic task that you have, you just hit it with one scoop at a time, like small bites. Remember, back to that 1% that I was talking about in the last video. You don't recognize how much work you're actually doing until you reach a point and you're like, whoa. So my desire to dine, have dinner, go out with this girl that was so intriguing to me for some reason. She became my motivation for a lot of things, actually, not just Spanish, but that moment I had with her when I asked her in Spanish if she didn't want to know my name. Um, and her response, the fact that for even maybe half a second, I think it was like 3 seconds though, honestly, that I had convinced her that maybe I actually knew that language, that my accent wasn't that bad. Her response was very genuine in her surprise. She's like, Sí, ¿cuál es tu nombre? Like, she responded in Spanish. She's like, yeah, what's your name? You know, we had been talking at work for quite a while. And, you know, it's just how it is in the warehouse life. You know, you'll tell somebody your whole entire story, and then the next day they'll walk right past you like you didn't tell them anything about yourself, like you guys never even spoke. So it's just natural. We were walking through the warehouse, just saying hi, talking and stuff, just kicking it. And I never even knew this. Well, actually, I had known her name because I asked, but she never asked my name. And it never came up in any of our conversations. And her response to my breaking out that little bit of Spanish that I had known, that I had practiced, that I had already known, was enough to make me think like, yeah, I'm going to go all in on this language. And there were other things too that accelerated my learning and accelerated my desire and passion, but that's going to be for a completely separate video because I have to develop a little bit more trust with you guys and let you guys know, or, you know, yeah, just develop a little bit more trust. But that moment was the day that I was like, okay, I'm going all in on Spanish. And from that day, I really went all in. And I remember I started reading Principito more. And I was, you know, engaging with the guy Juan more. And then that's when I first decided to, it was after this, it was after the process, but I decided to join the Spanish group, the little Spanish meetup. I found it on meetup.com, the little Spanish group. And it's just like, I think that was when I had actually started, it's probably like 6 months later of progressively doing this, learning this language. I had started incorporating like Spanish music into my life. And that's when like I was listening to podcasts. I'm going a little bit off on a tangent here, probably going a little bit too far ahead, but there were so many podcasts. There are so many free methods of learning on YouTube. YouTube has been a resource for every single thing that I've ever learned, and it's 100% free. And if you don't like the ads, pay that little 14, 15 bucks to get the premium version. It's completely worth it. To me, it's paid for itself. But diving into some of the podcasts, and I'll mention them in future videos too, I'm sure. But there were a bunch. Espanol, just a few come to mind though. Espanol con Juan. Um, there's Labyrinth to Success. There's one I'm really trying to think of that I listen to every single day. There was Spanish learning. Right now, still, I'm listening to Mr. Spanish. That's a really advanced one. There's just so many Spanish chants. So, Brenda Romagnello, she was like my favorite one because she's actually from Argentina, but her lessons were just so immersive. I could just fall into her lessons and understand. She teaches in a Spanish first style, so the majority of what she's saying is in Spanish. And then I would find these other podcasts or lessons where it's like they would tell you a story. Stories are such a powerful way to learn Spanish, such a powerful, and I would recommend that to you, is learning through stories. I was just listening every day. There was this, I would find these Spanish lessons where it was like, they would tell you the first part of the story, short, simple stories in A1 to right now I'm listening to stuff in C1. Like can really understand it very well at a high degree, as long as it's slow, a little bit slower and not so many pauses. Um, I was listening to short stories in Spanish, very helpful, by the way. At the A1 level, they'll tell you the whole story in Spanish first, and then they'll tell you the story again in English. And I would just listen to the same story over and over till I really, really got it. And then they go over the main vocabulary words of the story. Same thing with Labyrinth to Success. They would go over the main vocabulary words of the story that were not every single word, but the main ones that you should probably know. And then it's like I would just replay the story until like I felt like I understood it. And then I would listen to Spanish Hacks podcasts where they just talk about how other people learned. And then I spoke with many other people. I would just ask them, people who didn't speak English very well, like, how did you learn English? That would be my main question. Like, how did you learn it? I'm like, oh, I learned it in my country, or I learned it by myself reading papers. When I found out that I was going to be coming to America, or when I realized I was going to come to America, I started learning it. And they would just tell me, they were like, oh, some people would say YouTube. Some people will say this guy told me he learned just by reading the American newspaper. And it's just like, that's where I got the tip. He was like, any word I didn't know, I just highlighted it. And then I looked it up in the dictionary and I wrote it. And something that helped me out a lot was just like actually writing in Spanish, was writing down what I was reading and listening to it while I was reading it. So I would find books like El Principito I would look at the words and then I would listen to the story as I was reading it. And then later on, I would be listening to the story while I was reading it and trying to write it down. So the words were being stored in my mind, because writing is a very powerful form of to help you remember things. And that was my progress for probably about a year. That's all I did. And then I rented out the place and I didn't have a place to live. So I think I moved back. I moved back again. That was when I moved back to, well, that was the second time I moved back home, I think. I moved back home for a little while, not very long. I went back home because I didn't have a place to live because I had rented out the place that I was working on. And I came back and I spoke to someone. They're like, wow, your Spanish has gotten really good. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And I didn't really believe it. And then I think I went back, or no, I went home for a trip to go play music or something. I took a leave of absence from work and somebody had said that. And then I came back and I was always talking with this guy, Juan, from not El Salvador, Ecuador. And he was always giving me tips, but even though he would entertain my Spanish, he would listen to me in Spanish. He'd been here for 30 years. He always talked to me in English, because he didn't want to confuse me, because he just knew that my comprehension wasn't there yet. But he always talked to me about his country. And then I was already falling in love with the culture and going to the Spanish meetups. And then at one of the Spanish meetups, I met this girl who was also from Ecuador. And then I started talking to her, and it's the beautiful thing that I realized is like, I love America without a doubt. This is my country. I was born here. But the pride and love these people have for their countries is so much more deeper, I would say, than our love for America. And it's just like, until you go there and experience their country, you probably won't understand it. At least that's how I feel about that. But they have a very great, strong, powerful pride for their country. And it just like really made me look at the language in a different way. Like they love their language too. Like even over English, even the ones that can speak English, like they prefer to speak Spanish. And it's like, that was another thing that drew me into Spanish. It's like the way that the language is spoken, there's a rhythm to it. English is very plain and dry, the way that it's spoken. You can speak it poetically and with flavor, but Spanish, the way that it rolls off your tongue, the ¿Cómo va? Pues, sí o no? You know, it's like, there's a dance to the language. There's a little swing to it. You don't speak it flat like you speak English, and the language speaks directly to your heart. And it's like, I noticed that I was understanding the language. I noticed that from going to the Spanish meetups, and that actually I could understand a lot of Spanish just from going to the meetups, because I had spent so many hours every day nonstop just listening to this language. While I was working, and I was realizing in the meetups that I was understanding the language and that I spoke a lot better than I could, because they pair you off in groups and everybody's just talking at the meetups. The meetups had actually, it was called the Jacksonville English Spanish Meetup. Changed my Spanish trajectory completely when I found this group, because I went just to see what it would be all about. But I didn't think it was actually going to be cool. But then I got there and everybody was actually speaking Spanish. And it's like the first hour you speak Spanish, second hour you speak English for the Spanish speakers that are there trying to better their English. But it seems like everybody's just there speaking Spanish. And we were all there just talking. And I was like, my first time going, and I was just like, wow, this is really powerful. Like it really opened my eyes, like going to the meetups, even though I was nervous about going because of my Spanish level. It's my first time doing anything like that. That's another thing Spanish taught me, is to put myself in uncomfortable situations. Like doing that helped me in other areas of my life. And I guess I was already used to doing that from being a performer, but I had to expose myself. And that's another thing that you're going to encounter in your learning journey when you're working with others. But I had already encountered this when I was playing guitars. When I started learning guitar, I learned later, way later in life, this instrument, when other people that I know had basically already mastered the instrument. Is you're going to be around people who have mastered this language. And some of them aren't happy that you're learning the language. Some of them don't care that you're learning the language. But you have to remember, and it was the same thing with guitar. It's just like, I was a rapper for so many years in my life. And when I decided to play the guitar, I got criticism from people who knew that I was a rapper. And some people were like, oh yeah, that's great. You know, not really thinking that I would learn how to play guitar. In my opinion, I don't know if that's true or not, but some people didn't really care that I was playing guitar. You know, they didn't want to help me. It's your own journey. That's why you have to have a why, because you're going to come across these things. And it's like, you'll go speak Spanish. You're excited about learning Spanish, and you'll go speak Spanish to a native speaker. They're just going to look at you like you got two heads. And it's like, okay, they'll just respond to you in English, you know? And it's like, always remember that this journey is yours. Anything you're learning, it's your journey. You have to seek out the people. That's why I always clung to the people that entertained my Spanish and gave me an opportunity to learn. And same thing with guitar. Like, you'll find people in your journey that are going to support you. Like, not even support you, they'll just entertain you with what you're doing. It's like, and I'm going to do a whole video on Bob one day, because he taught me so many lessons. And these people will be instrumental in your journey. Like, for example, I had always played guitar by myself in my room, but then one day, like this band I followed, their band broke up, and then the bass player just asked me if I wanted to play one day. And I always thought it was the weirdest thing because like this is a professional musician who wants to play music with me. I could never understand it. Like I could never understand why he would waste his time playing music with me. To me, it seemed like wasting time because, you know, you got to step way down to play with someone like me. And it was just like, sometimes people see something in you that you haven't yet recognized in yourself. This was another thing that I learned through Spanish because for years, even guitar was like something that intimidated me and I was bashful around. I was intimidated playing guitar, even though I was out playing music like almost every weekend around other people who were way better than me. And Spanish kind of like broke me away from that fear, that of not being good enough, because I constantly had to expose myself to people who know this language, who breathe this language. And it was just a really beautiful thing. But to continue on with my story, the meetup was really powerful, was very, very powerful for me because I met other people who had an interest in learning the language and I was actually speaking. Also in the meetups, they have native speakers, a lot of native speakers there who will correct you and guide you in a way in the language, in your journey of language. They'll teach you how to speak the right way. And like this was just instrumental for me because also the meetup was free. So it was like, I remember after the first one, I went home and I was like, wow, like I was speaking Spanish. Like I can speak this language and I was understanding things. Like it just felt strange. It still feels strange to me to this day. Like I'll take trips to Colombia and it's just like, I'm speaking this language that I wasn't born speaking. Navigating the airport in Spanish. I'm conversing with the taxista in español, hablando con mi mesero en español, poner una orden por mi comida in español. I'm just speaking in Spanish with the hotel concierge. I'm just speaking with Spanish. And it's just like so many scenarios. And it's just like, sometimes I can't believe that I actually learned how to speak this language. And again, my Spanish isn't perfect. I make a lot of mistakes, and that isn't the point. But I have to wrap this video up. But my point in this second episode is that this journey is yours. It's yours alone. Anything that you're learning, especially a language, it's going to be difficult. Voy a ser muy difícil. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very frustrating, but you have to hold on to that why that we talked about in the beginning, and you have to develop in the first video, and you have to develop an obsession. And then in this video, that the main point is that you have to realize this journey belongs to you. It's nobody else's journey. So always remember your why and come and let that pull you back on your path when you want to quit, and take breaks. Take breaks. Don't just do the 10-hour thing like I do if you can't handle it, because even the 10 hours a day at work, there were breaks. Like I would go to lunch and eat lunch or something. And it's like, that was annoying for me too, but I just did it. And now over time, I could listen to more. Even now, I can listen to more Spanish and more Spanish. Like it's my life now. I listen to Spanish music on the way to work. I listen to it at home. I listen to it all the time. You know, I know so many artists: Bad Bunny, Karol G, Shakira, Natalie Lafourcade. I don't know how to say her name, but she's this beautiful artist from Veracruz, Mexico. Dani Trubek. There's so many methods, and it's Hello Spanish podcast. There's just so many methods, and you have to embrace them. And during this journey, some part along the journey, it's going to become part of who you are. Spanish is becoming part of who I am. It's part of my spirit. It's part of my soul. And I can't imagine my life being a different way. It's an alternate way to think and perceive things from an alternate perspective that you never had before. And it's changed my life completely. I could talk about this all day, but we're going to cut it there because I have to get back inside. But I want to thank you very much for joining me on this journey. pues seguro voy a crear un episodio 3. Vas a ser un tercero episodio. For sure, there's going to be a third episode. If you just stumbled across this video, go back and watch the first one. Go watch my video of me talking about my journey in Spanish. And make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like, because we are just getting started here. Oh, yeah, check me out on my website. It's pentleyholmes.com if you want to learn more about me, if you want to get in contact with me, if you want to book me for a show, house concert, whatever, you want to have a dinner, you want to have a chat. I'd love to hear from you. Until then, my name is Pentley Holmes. I'm a singer-songwriter in pursuit of a wild dream. And again, I just thank you for being here. Peace.